So 2 of Parliament's portfolio committees have kicked off their oversight visits and public hearings on the state of living and working conditions on the country's farms. Now, this comes after the EFF tabled a motion in Parliament back in November 2020, calling for the establishment of an ad hoc committee to thoroughly investigate challenges that are facing farm workers and their families in this country. The oversight visits will conclude at the end of this month. Let's get you a sense of what has been ascertained so far. Bring in EFF MP Sam Matiase, who joins us now live via our video link. We're hoping to also be joined by Mandla Mandela, who is the chairperson of the Agriculture and Rural Development Committee. But in the interim, Sam, it's great to have you on the program. Thank you so much indeed for making time. I want to take us back to November 2020. Remind us once again why the EFF felt it was so important to actually probe what's happening in the country's farms and what questions you had as you conducted these oversight visits.
Ayanda, greetings to you and to your viewers at home. Look, perhaps you need to give a little bit of background to this, that in pre-colonial Africa, African people were living in peace, working their land and living in comfort and in mutual coexistence with the environment until the colonial settlers arrived in this country. And they justify colonization on the ground that it has got to do away with the barbarity of slavery. But when overtaking over the country through land conquest and this land dispossession, these guys quickly replace what they said they have come to resolve, which is to free labor from the barbarity of slavery. They engaged upon enslaving people, enslaving African masses, by way of ensuring that they conscribe them in what is called coerced labor system. Now, it is against that background that the EFF in 2000 took upon itself to present to Parliament a motion that Parliament must look into the living and working conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, and labor tenants. And it proposed that an ad hoc committee should be established to look into that, because that would have needed a much more in-depth in looking of the living conditions of farm workers and farm laborers.
Yeah.
But the ANC proposed a joint committee and further proposed that not only African black farm workers' conditions must be looked into, but farm owners as well.
Absolutely.
And we said the farm owners have got nothing to do with the harshness of the conditions on the farm. Why is it that the ANC thinks that it must be biased towards farm owners than the victims of the very people that the ANC say must be also, their conditions should be looked into? Therefore, going forward, the Joint Committee has been into different provinces to look into the real situation, and that, I must admit, it has been delayed for over a year by the ANC because it has always not been committed to free our people from the harshness of the barbarity that they have been subjected to by white-owned farmers in this country.
Yeah, Sam, I want to make sure we don't misunderstand you. What do you mean that farm owners don't have anything to do with the living and working conditions of farm workers?
Farm owners are the perpetrators of the harsh working and living conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, and labor tenants. They evict them willy-nilly. They are a law unto themselves. They account to no one. The barbarity of slavery is very much alive on the countrysides, on the farms that we have visited, and others were yet to visit.
Okay, I think perhaps you just misspoke earlier because now we're on the same page. Mandla Mandela, as you can see, is also part of our discussion now. Once again, he's the chairperson of the Agriculture and Rural Development Committee. Mandla, it's great to have you on the program as well. My understanding is that you've actually already visited up to 3 farms in areas like the Matlosana municipality in the northwest. What have you been able to find there? What are your major areas of concern?
Well, thank you for having us on the show, and good morning to your viewers. Perhaps our findings may be looked into in a three-pronged approach, in that you have on one aspect farm workers that are aggrieved by the horrific treatment that they've been witnessing from farm owners. So in that regard, we have looked at as to what are the challenges that our people have been facing on farms in terms of their working and living conditions. But then on the other, you also have a role that we seem to have even picked up in the Northwest, where officials of the department are actually not doing their work. They are not representing the workers correctly and ensuring that they fight for the plight of the workers. In an example, there were 3 farms that have been able to legally evict the farm workers on the farm because they simply got a court order where the labor tenants were not represented in court, and the department had failed in providing legal support for those labor tenants. And we are speaking about people that have been on these farms for 31 years, 40 years, 42 years. And this is absolutely unacceptable that people have been labored for 42 years on a farm can be just put on the street without any compensation, without any of their labor tenants' rights asserted.
Yeah, and who's the indictment on insofar as that is concerned, Mandla? Sorry to interrupt you there, because what you've told us now is that the eviction actually happened through a court order. So some processes are being followed, which raises questions around where the cracks lie.
So where the real cracks lie is that farm owners are taking it upon themselves to force their farm laborers off the farm, and they employ various tactics in terms of denying them access to clean drinkable water, denying them electricity, and to some extent even destroying the housing that the workers have had on the farms, therefore totally erasing their land tenure rights. As a result, you then have officials of the department that come to play where they are supposed to actually represent the labor tenants and ensure that farm workers' rights are protected. And in some cases, we were hearing farm workers saying that it is officials that are telling us to leave the farms. They will be able to secure some land for us. And when you go and look at and assess the land that they have been put in, you are exposed to that these farm workers and farm dwellers' lives have been reduced to living like animals.
Sure.
Yet there is also the other side of it, where you find that farm owners themselves, in some instances, we found that they are saying that they are seeing officials for the first time. They've never been taken into confidence by officials of the department as to what legislation is. And a classic example that Honorable Mandla Matiase has also witnessed is that some farm owners are paying as much as 23 rand for their laborers, whereas the national minimum wage is 23 rand 19 cents. So for a little as much as a couple of cents, you can have your farm rendered non-compliant because you haven't met that national minimum wage. So the farm workers also say that they are being failed by officials of the department.
Sure.
This is why I said that our approach is three-pronged, is to look at all the 3 elements that contribute to the working and living conditions of farm workers and farm dwellers and labor tenants.
Let me bring in Dr. Matiase into our discussion once again. You know, many people will tell you that if there's any quarter of our society where the legacy of apartheid and colonialism still thrives, it's probably on the country's farms. And it raises questions, especially on the back of what Mandla Mandela has had to say, Sam, that what more can be done to ensure that those who are vulnerable in those spaces have someone to lean on, in a context where we can't expect the portfolio committees to visit every farm every year to ensure that there's compliance?
Well, thanks, Ayanda, for this question. Look, it doesn't surprise us nor shock us to realize that 28 years later, the ANC awakens to these realities of the unbearable living conditions of farm workers, dwellers, and labor tenants. Yet they've been presiding over state power for 28 years. Now, we, as the EFF, have proposed that to successfully and sustainably address the plight of farm workers on the countryside. One is to ensure that we establish a permanent People's Land Court that will deal with grievances and violations of human rights as they occur on the farms on a daily basis and provide swift interventions. And we further propose that there should be a land ombudsman who shall function and have similar powers as the public protector to look into matters such as this. Ayanda, we have discovered that through these public hearings, that we have discovered hard truths and pains of our people who live like animals, as Honorable Mandla Mandela has said. And these are characterized by daily and random evictions, physical assaults of farm workers, dwellers, and labor tenants, and they are thrown on the side of the roads to fend for themselves with no government official, with nobody, no MEC, no minister, no president bothering to look into this situation. It's easy to shift the blame to officials. Of course, yes, officials are eyes and ears of the state on the ground. But the responsibility lies with the ruling power, with the ruling party. It lies with those who've got authority to direct policy and to tell officials what to do, to discipline officials, to intervene decisively. ANC calls itself a leader of society. It says the state is a developmental state. What is developmental about the fate of farm workers that the government has not attended?
Sure. Yeah, and many people will say this is where, parliamentary oversight committees come in to hold the executive to account. Given what you've been able to ascertain so far, Mandla Mandela, maybe I can throw this final take at you. What do your recommendations and accountability measures look like moving forward?
I guess ours as a portfolio committee, being a multi-party delegation, is to look into these matters, compile a report on each province that will then be summed up together as one report, which will be tabled in the National Assembly and be adopted in the House. Whatever the recommendations that we'll be able to bring to the House is what we will be wanting to ensure they are looked into. As I've previously said, that there are three key focal areas for us, which are vested on one will be the employer itself, being the farm owners. Second will be the officials of the department, as well as third, it will be focusing on the working and living conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers, as well as labor tenants. Our findings are clear. Whatever farm we go into, and we are able to pick up the challenges from the farm workers, they are noted. But I think one major hurdle here is to ensure that the officials of the department are visible to the farm dwellers and farm workers. In most instances, when we are traveling, they clearly state that they don't know who are the officials and their representatives on the ground. And we would need to ensure that that information is made public to them. They can be able to access the officials in their respective regions, in their provinces, and then failure to not be able to resolve those matters, they can then be able to write to the portfolio committee in Parliament. And we've made our information available to them.
I guess whatever the intervention looks like moving forward.
That's one point.
Okay, let me give you a final bite at the cherry, Sam, very quickly.
That's one point. And Ayanda, look, it's really unacceptable, and this sets a wrong precedent for all farm owners. that the state president in his farm in Palafala subjected to a domestic woman into the same treatment that other white farmers are subjecting their workers to. What kind of a president is this? What kind of leadership is this? Where the president will subject a domestic worker, a woman for that matter, into horrific, horrible conditions where she was undressed, assaulted, and subjected to all forms of inhuman treatment. The EFF, lastly, calls on all interested parties to continue to participate in the public hearings to enable that finally the legislature and relevant bodies undertake a serious assessment and evaluation of the state of the living and working conditions of farm workers, farm dwellers and laborers to ensure that they are liberated from forced, coerced labor system they've been subjected to for many years and centuries.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks very much indeed. And it's obviously also important for us to emphasize that investigations into what took place at the president's farm are still underway. For now, thanks very much indeed to both our guests, EFF MP Sam Matiase as well as Mandla Mandela, who is the chairperson of the Agriculture and Rural Development Committee. Once again, appreciate your time.